So the last time we had class was 2 months ago when we were talking, at least 2 months, and we were talking about, we picked the topic of separation from Krishna. It's a very elevated topic. And we warned everyone that we may not understand, but we're going to read because it exists. Love of Krishna in its highest form comes when a devotee is feeling separation. So we originally we're talking about this in relation to separation from Guru and how to understand that, because that's been difficult for devotees to understand, how when they're separated from their Guru, they can actually be closer. So what I did was I researched things that Prabhupada said about separation. And most of it, of course, is in relation to separation from Krishna, but the same principles apply. Because when we're separated from our Guru, we feel separated. But in pure love of Krishna, when you feel separated, you feel closer. And your love is greater. So for example, maybe we gave this example. Sometimes the question comes up, why did Krishna leave? Why didn't Krishna go back to Vrindavan? Okay, he had to leave, take care of some business in Mathura. Why didn't he go back right after that? And there's some reasons given, but his parents wanted him to go to school and so forth. And so he went right after he left Vrindavan. After he killed Kamsa, he went to Sandipani Muni's school. And then one thing led to another, to another. And so there seems to be external reasons that he didn't go back. But the internal reason is that the love of the residents of Braja was increased in his separation. So, and his love for them was increased in separation. So he actually stayed away, which, materially speaking, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't think by staying away, our love will increase. You would think by coming together, our love will increase. But so Krishna remains separate. And so the love of the Brajbasis increased, Krishna's love increased. And Prabhupada used to say those things when he would go somewhere. He would say, by being separated, we're actually closer. And he would say things like, I always felt the presence of my spiritual master. I never felt that I was separated from him. So that was kind of why that was the idea that behind this class. I don't remember exactly what stimulated it or who asked for this class, but it was just a discussion about separation from Guru. And now, as we read, we're going to read a lot about separation from Krishna. And as I said, it's a very elevated topic. And sometimes we may not understand it well, or we may only understand it according to some material idea. But anyway, the only way to understand something is you hear about it and again, and we discuss it. So we've been reading from a document which I compiled, and when I went back to the document, it said, this is where you left off, which was only one page, and I remember reading about 8 pages or 7 or something. I'm not sure why it said that, but in any case, we're going to read. Unless you have perfect memory, you won't remember everything we read, and some of you were not at the other classes. So this is from Adi Leela 1339, and Chaitanya Dasi is going to put it in the chat. So if you want to read along with me, you can go to the chat. And so this is the verse, and then there's a purport she'll put in, yeah. For the remaining 12 years, he stayed in Jagannath Puri. He taught everyone how to taste the transcendental mellow of love of Krishna by tasting it himself, of course, talking about Mahaprabhu. Now purport. A person who is advanced in Krishna consciousness always feels separation from Krishna, because such a feeling of separation excels the feeling of meeting Krishna. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his last 12 years of existence within this world, at Jagannath Puri, taught the people of the world how, with a feeling of separation, one can develop his dormant love of Krishna. Such feelings of separation or meeting with Krishna are different stages of love of Godhead. These feelings develop in time when a person seriously engages in devotional service. The highest stage is called prema bhakti, but this stage is attained by executing sadhana bhakti. One should not try to elevate himself artificially to the stage of prema bhakti without seriously following the regulative principles of sadhana bhakti. Prema bhakti is the stage of relishing, whereas sadhana bhakti is the stage of improving in devotional service. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught this cult of devotional service in full detail by practical application in his own life. It is said, therefore, apani achari bhakti shikaimu shobhore. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself. And in the role of a Krishna Bhakta, a devotee of Krishna, he instructed the entire world how one can execute devotional service and thus go back home, back to Godhead in due course of time. So there are 2 points that Prabhupada's making here. I think one point is obvious, that how would you feel separation if you don't have love? Because how can you miss something that you're not attached to, right? Just like, sometimes we hear about some disaster, like there's a train wreck, or there's a tornado, or there's a bombing. Or in America, it's common that there's shooting in public place, in schools, malls, like that. And so then they report that 6 people were shot, 2 people died. We don't know those people. We feel bad, of course, for the families, but the bad that we feel lasts about 3 seconds or 10 seconds, because we don't know them. And if we knew them, the bad we feel could last years or our whole life, right? So in the same way, if you don't know someone, how will you feel separation from them? And even if you know them, if you don't have a close relationship, you wouldn't really miss them that much if they're gone. And sometimes we hear a devotee is left. We don't know that devotee. So we feel something, but we don't know them. But when you know them, then you feel pain. That pain can continue for years or for your whole life. So Prabhupada says that separation is an aspect of love of Krishna. It's a stage of love. What does he say? Yeah. What did he say? Anyway, so it's part of love of Krishna to feel separation. It's natural. And it's actually cultivated as a specific taste, or which is considered a higher taste than meeting. And we may or may not understand that. We can understand it theoretically. The theoretical understanding is that in separation, the meditation is stronger. The attachment is stronger. You're away from something. When you don't have it, you want it more. When you don't have it, you think of it more. Now, materially speaking, if I'm separated from something, the thing I'm separated from, it doesn't satisfy me in separation, because it's different than, it's not present in my remembering it. And if I remember something I want, usually I want it more. It doesn't satiate me. But if I'm thinking of Krishna because he's non-different than his name, he's non-different than remembering him. So then by thinking of him, even in separation and missing him, I can't be separated from him because he's absolute. So if I'm thinking of him, even though it's separation, because I'm thinking of him, he's present. Does that make sense? Like I'm thinking of an apple, the apple's not present. But I'm thinking of Krishna, the thought of Krishna is Krishna. If Krishna is in my mind, and then the mind has made a deity of Krishna. So I'm thinking of Krishna now, my meditation on Krishna is intensified by separation. So because I'm with Krishna more intensely in separation through thinking of him, then I'm feeling his presence more intensely. That's how it works. So that's why sometimes we have difficulty understanding how separation is relishable, because materially it's not really relishable. Separation materially is separation. Although you may think of the person, but that thinking doesn't pacify your need to be with the person. It often just increases your feeling that I'm missing this person, right? So as a devotee feels separation from Krishna, the meditation on Krishna is more intense. Like we have this word samadhi. So samadhi is the ultimate stage, the last stage of meditation. In samadhi, there is focus on one object solely. So in separation, it's the highest samadhi. And so therefore, it's the highest connection of Krishna. Sounds strange that you'd be with Krishna and you'd think, well, it's better you go away. My love will increase. From a material point of view, it doesn't make sense, right? So it's a spiritual principle. Now, we want to try to apply that to association with devotees here and association with a spiritual master. And there's two kinds of separation from the guru that I've experienced. One is physical distance, and one is when the guru leaves. So disciples of Prabhupada have experience of both of those. Physical distance from Srila Prabhupada, and then permanent distance, or what appears to be permanent distance after Prabhupada left. And you may have heard me say before that when Prabhupada would come to visit a temple, many of the devotees who did book distribution would not stay back to be with Prabhupada. And when asked why, they would say, because I feel closer to Prabhupada when I'm distributing his books, when I'm doing his service. Especially, it's quite a direct service. It's his books. So, you're telling people about Prabhupada, about his books. It's his desire that this be done. So rather than just be with Prabhupada, they felt closer by being with him through service. So because they had that experience, they could carry that experience through after Prabhupada left and still feel that, what they felt when he was alive. They felt that closeness through service. Now, some devotees will say, but isn't the personal presence of the guru special? And I would never say it's not special. And I would never say that it doesn't inspire us in special ways. But what we're trying to learn is that we can have that connection through service, through hearing the instruction, through remembrance of the activities of the spiritual master. And so one of the things that you'll notice if you've ever seen the memories of Srila Prabhupada, it's so interesting to watch, because you'll see so much emotion. So here's a devotee talking about Prabhupada. I did mine in probably the middle or late 90s. So that was like 25 years after Prabhupada left. And some of the devotees are doing them now, or have done them in the last 5 years, which means they're talking about, they're remembering events of 40 to 50 years ago. And then what you see is that so much emotion is going on, as if the devotee is right there in that pastime that they're talking about. It's like they're experiencing the emotion of that pastime. Have you seen that before? Sometimes they're laughing, sometimes they're crying, sometimes they stop talking, they're overcome with emotion. So that shows that they are, yeah, they're experiencing the same emotions that they had when Prabhupada was physically present by talking about those pastimes. I don't know if that's true materially, maybe it is. But whatever the case is, that by remembering the instructions, the activities, our own interactions with devotees in the past or with our spiritual master, that we can experience the similar feelings that we had when we were present with them, and that becomes what keeps us going. And then, you look at our Prabhupada left in 1977, so we're at what, 46 years or something. So 47, how many years ago is that? If it 2027 would be 50. So -4, so we're at 46 years, right? So to be able to serve someone with such devotion and dedication, where you're sacrificing everything, 46 years later, still going strong. Obviously, there must be some connection there, something going on, right? Now, at the same time, there were devotees who couldn't make it after Prabhupada left, that they were very dependent on his physical association. So they weren't able to appreciate that service and separation. They were always very dependent on Prabhupada's personal association or their own Krishna consciousness. They got, a lot of us didn't have that personal association, so we couldn't get dependent on it. But those who had it could get dependent on it because they were so inspired by it. But when Prabhupada left, it was almost like they didn't have their own spiritual strength. It's interesting. I was thinking about this the other day, how when we were in Prabhupada's presence, we were feeling so Krishna conscious that it was often difficult to understand our own level of advancement, because so much of our advancement was coming from Prabhupada's association. So that's why you might think, why did a lot of these young men take sannyas, or why did a lot of these young devotees really stretch themselves to do things which they found later they couldn't sustain? It was too high a level. Because in Prabhupada's association, they were motivated to do that. And it was difficult to distinguish my own Krishna consciousness from what I was getting, because I'm just feeling inspired. How do I know where that's coming from? I mean, it's difficult. Maybe if we're honest with ourselves, we can understand so much of that was coming by Prabhupada's inspiration. It's not really from me. But when Prabhupada left, it was kind of like, okay, now what am I left with? I don't have this personal association pushing me. So I'm left with who I am. And some devotees weren't left with much because they had become so accustomed and in an unhealthy way dependent on Prabhupada, so that when he left, they didn't find much in their life. Maybe they weren't so attached to his instructions or to his mission, and more attached to the bliss of his personal association, which was very blissful, for sure. No doubt. And very motivated by that association, but that's kind of like training wheels on your bike. And so when Prabhupada left, the training wheels came off, and some devotees never really learned how to ride a bike without the training wheels. And you had to learn, or when Prabhupada left, you were forced to learn how to ride without the training wheels, and many devotees were able to do that, but some were not. So it's interesting, because we say you should be dependent on the Gurudev, your mercy is all I'm made of. So that's humility. Whatever I can do is his mercy. But that mercy comes through executing his instruction. But then there's this unhealthy dependency, like we have in psychological terms, unhealthy codependency. And Codependency is considered a weakness, where in spiritual life, it's considered a strength. I'm totally dependent on the mercy of my guru. But if not done correctly, it becomes a weakness where one can't function. Like, what do you think about this? I don't know. I can't think. I have to ask my guru. Right? In some cases, that may be true when you're talking about something very deep or difficult. But in ordinary day-to-day affairs, a Prabhupada would not expect that you would be that foolish that after he's given you 80 volumes of books, you can't figure things out yourself. So I am dependent on Prabhupada's instructions. I depend on him to give me intelligence through his instructions. So that's a healthy dependency, right? Yes, my intelligence is purified by his instructions, but unhealthy dependency is, well, unless he tells me what to do, I can't, or somebody tells me what to do, I can't think straight. I don't know what to do. Or unless he's there pushing me, I just sleep all day. So that's taking codependency to an unhealthy level, whereas codependency should inspire. I am dependent on my guru. His instructions inspire me. His service inspires me. His books give me the intelligence to make proper decisions. So, yeah. So the other point Prabhupada's making is that these feelings of separation are symptomatic of prema, and how prema is not something you can expect to get easily. So, Utsahanischaya Dharya. So, Rupa Goswami says, you have to be patient because you're not going to get prema bhakti right away. And patience can be easily understood by the word sadhana. Prabhupada. Is he talking about sadhana here? Anyway, yeah. Sadhana bhakti is improving. Prabhupada says sadhana bhakti is the stage of improving. Prema bhakti is the stage of relishing. So patience is understood by the word sadhana because sadhana means practice. And sadhya means the goal. So if you're anxious to become Krishna conscious and you're thinking it's taking a long time, just remember the word sadhana. And if you're thinking of the word sadhya, like, why don't I have the goal? Well, the goal is something that happens much later. First you practice, then you get the goal, right? Now, so I'm hankering, I want to be Krishna conscious, but patience, 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 my dear. You're not yet on the level of sadhya. Now there's another stage when you advance to a point where you don't have patience. You just want it. I want it, I have to have it now because you're more advanced. And so your hankering for Krishna becomes so intense that you just have to have love. And that's called spontaneous devotional service. So that's another stage. But initially the stage is patience. Sadhana, practice, and patience. And so what happens to a lot of devotees is they miscalculate how long it's going to take to go from the beginning stages of sadhana to the stage of prema. And so they become impatient because they think it's supposed to happen faster than it's going to happen. And I don't know if you've ever tried to wash a pot that's burnt. And so you look at the pot and you get some steel scrubber and you think, okay, we'll just scrub it off. The burnt rice, we'll scrub it off. The burnt potato, well, especially the burnt rice, that's difficult to wash. And if you've ever tried to clean a pot with burnt rice, it always takes longer than you think, doesn't it? Like you scrub, and then, you pour the water out and it's like, there's only like 1/5 of the pot is clean. All the rice is stuck. So if you've cleaned burnt rice off pots long enough, you start to understand how long it takes. You get a realistic view. And so our conditioning is like that. Like we think, oh, we're just conditioned souls, we'll just wash the pot. And we start washing, we think, oh yeah, it's going to be clean very quickly, but it takes longer than we think. That's where the word patience comes in. So patience, you can't have patience if you think you're going to be pure in 3 years. You know, you'll have prema in 3 years. Then what happens when you make that miscalculation? Then you lose your determination and you give up. Like, I've done this 3 years, I'm still a mess. Yeah. But I want to tell you a story, though. It's a beautiful story. Yesterday in Alachua, there was a celebration of the death or the disappearance of one of the early devotees in ISKCON named Gaur Sundar. He joined in San Francisco with his wife Govinda Dasi. And then Prabhupada sent them to Hawaii, maybe 1970. So they were the first devotees to go to Hawaii. And he made many devotees in Hawaii. And many of those devotees spoke about his influence. So we got to hear all about him. If you see old pictures of San Francisco or Hawaii, you'll see his picture. But he was extremely influential in the development of the Hawaii yatra. And then he had left Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada tried to get him back, and he wouldn't come back, at least at that time when Prabhupada was here. And then I didn't know, but then he had remarried and he had still been practicing Krishna consciousness on his own, not within ISKCON, but on his own. I thought that when he left in the early 70s, he had never come back. But he was practicing on his own in his own way and so forth. And he wasn't associating with devotees. He wasn't living near devotees and doing what he did, but not in the forefront as he was in those days. And maybe for many years had given up Krishna consciousness, or at least for some time. So what was so encouraging was that his wife, he married again later, and his wife said that when he was in his last days, he said, "Do you see that? There's a door there." There was no door. He said, "Do you see that door?" And so she just said yes, just to go along with it. He said that Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya are there. So he had not been actively engaged much in devotional service, doing some, but for a period of time, no, and then not a frontline preacher and so forth, doing what he could and, working to maintain himself and so forth. Prabhupada loved him so much, and he had done so much important service for Prabhupada in opening up Hawaii, and like everyone who joined in the early 70s in Hawaii was because of him. And there's so many people who joined. So in any case, the moral of the story is that even though he might have been feeling, I don't have love of Krishna is miles away, light years away. They're here in his last moments, Prabhupada's coming and with Lord Chaitanya to take him. Is that amazing? So now you all may be thinking, I'm not very Krishna conscious, it's taking so long. So part of the patience is maybe our whole life will feel that way. And then at the end, Prabhupada will come and take us. And then the devotee was reminding me, I was speaking last night about this, and the devotee was reminding me that maybe you've heard this, that Prabhupada said, he said, the spiritual master is responsible, taking you back to Godhead, don't make me come back. So then when I heard this story, I said, oh, Prabhupada doesn't want to have to come back, so he's coming now. He'll come now for us first. And so maybe I'm Krishna conscious on this level, or maybe on this level or this level. But if I've sincerely served the mission, if I have made Prabhupada smile, if I've sincerely tried my best to do some service, sincerely tried my best to spread Krishna consciousness, sincerely tried my best to teach people what Prabhupada has taught me, then we can just patiently continue in our devotional service with faith that by doing that, Prabhupada will be there for us at the end to take us back to Godhead and introduce us to Krishna. Otherwise, you may be thinking, well, I'm not very Krishna conscious. It'll take me 100 lifetimes or whatever. And maybe traditionally that might be true, that we're not very Krishna conscious and it'll take us hundreds of lifetimes. But by pleasing Prabhupada, then he's there to take us. So even though sadhana is slow, maybe in this life you'll never feel that you got past bhajana kriya or anartha nivritti. But still, if you've tried to serve sincerely, then Prabhupada's there. And this is not the only story. There are two other stories in which Prabhupada appeared. Actually, there's so many stories of devotees leaving where either they've said or one could understand by what they said that Krishna has come or the gopis have come or the cowboy boys have come and to take them. There's lots of stories like that. But there's one story that's quite significant, and it's a story of a devotee who was a sannyasi and I assume quite instrumental in the early days of preaching in France, but later a devotee left Krishna consciousness, left his sannyas, and lived a life perhaps more degraded than before he was a devotee. I think he became addicted to drugs. I think he was selling drugs. It was a pretty low life. And when he was dying, his wife said that he said, and she wasn't even sure who Prabhupada was. She didn't really know about his devotional life. She said that he stood up and said, "Oh, Prabhupada, you've come." So that's kind of a classic story in the sense that this was a little bit of sincere devotional service for a few years and most the rest of his life of very degraded activities. And Prabhupada came for him because of that service. So it shows that Prabhupada has agreed to deliver us. Prabhupada has agreed to take us back to Godhead, and Prabhupada understands our disqualification, but a little sincere service can save us. Especially a little sincere service in trying to help other people become Krishna conscious. Distributing Prabhupada's books, telling people about Krishna, organizing programs, inviting people to programs, cooking prasadam, whatever it is we can do. And attracting the attention of Prabhupada. So, we may all be worried about, when will I love Krishna? When will that come? Maybe, well, even if you have love of Krishna, let's say, for example, you do get bhava or prema, at that point, you won't think you have it. So it'll always appear like you never have it. Either now, we know we don't have it, and if and when we have it, we'll feel we don't have it. So in that sense, we are not calculating, oh, I don't have love of God. When will I get it? How will I go back to Godhead? As opposed to, I know if I engage in service under the direction of Srila Prabhupada and try to please him and don't offend other devotees because that displeases him, then by his mercy, he'll be there for me. He'll take me because I lack in so many ways. And we all know we lack in so many ways, right? That's clear. It's Kali Yuga. This is not the age of sadhus. It's not the age. It's not Sat Yuga. We're very self-controlled, disciplined. We can control our minds, meditate thousands of years, sitting in one place. We can't do that. We can hardly chant 16 rounds sitting at one place. It's a very fallen age. Or if we chant 16 rounds, we can hardly control our mind. We can hardly control our mind for one Gayatri. It takes 4 minutes. So, but the sincerity of the devotee to try to serve Prabhupada, that's what Prabhupada sees. And or sincerity to serve your guru, sincerity to serve the other devotees. And Prabhupada says, yes, okay, you're in the book. We'll take, you tried your best. In the self-care workshop, we talk about trying your best. And so a lot of us try our best, but we're not satisfied with our best. We think our best is not good. So we get upset with ourselves. And just being logical about this rather than emotional, it doesn't really make sense to be upset with yourself about trying your best because you can't do any better than your best. So to be upset with yourself because you're not doing better, although you're doing your best, it's kind of self-punishment, or it's kind of almost a kind of self-torture. And it's certainly not the way Prabhupada sees it. So if we are trying our best and Prabhupada sees that, or your guru sees you're trying your best, that's perfect. Even though your best is imperfect, your best is perfect because it can't be any better than your best, right? I know you may think, yeah, I could do better. Well, of course, we could all do better. But according to our conditioning, right now, today, at this moment, you try your best. And with all sincerity. And that's the best you can do. And that's the purity that we're looking for. The external purity will come in course of time. And that you really can't force. You can only try to purify yourself, but there will be so many impurities that we have to tolerate. But the sincerity overrides that. That in spite of that, I'm sincerely serving. And Prabhupada is so kind that he allows us to engage in service in his mission, even though we're not qualified. And if we sincerely try to serve the orders of our spiritual master, the orders of Srila Prabhupada, the orders of our superiors, we'll be happy, we'll feel Krishna conscious. And if we take that mission to heart, then pretty much in any condition we can remain happy in Krishna consciousness with our spiritual master, without, after he leaves. It's not going to be that much different. Initially, we'll feel it's different, but I told this story before, but I think it's an appropriate story to tell now. When my godbrother in Los Angeles, the day that Prabhupada was coming to the airport, he told me, he said, I'm going to go to the airport to distribute books. And usually all the devotees would go and meet Prabhupada. We're talking like 300 devotees, the 350 that lived in Los Angeles in 1976. This was 1975. So yeah, there were well over 300 devotees just within a few houses of the temple, because we owned like 6 apartments. The temple did. So everybody was living around the temple. It was quite a beautiful situation. And so when Prabhupada would come, we would all go to the airport, vans. I don't know how we got 300 devotees to the airport, but it's a lot of cars. So we'd all go meet Prabhupada, or maybe it wasn't all 300 of us, but at least a few hundred. And then everyone would come back with Prabhupada, and then you just wanted to be with, Prabhupada around the temple. He'd give an address, like a welcome address, or maybe he'd walk around and you could see him like that. So this devotee said, I'm just going to stay at the airport and distribute books. And today I want to distribute 100 big books, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatams. And maybe nowadays 100 big books is not considered the greatest thing. I mean, it still is great, but in those days it was like rarely could anybody do that. And he said to me, if I just see Prabhupada coming through the airport, he didn't even go to the gate to greet Prabhupada. He just stayed distributing books in the terminal in which Prabhupada was coming through. So when Prabhupada came through, he could just see him. So he told me, if I can just see Prabhupada for a second, that will inspire me for the whole day to distribute 100 books. And that's what he did. He saw Prabhupada just for a second, as long as it takes for Prabhupada to walk through. He was just stayed in one spot, saw Prabhupada walk through. So maybe it was like 30 seconds, 40 seconds. And then I went up to him, and when Prabhupada came through, I said, so you're satisfied you saw Prabhupada? He said, yeah. I said, I'll stay at the airport. I'll distribute 100 big books. And he did. So there's no question about the inspiration one can get from seeing the spiritual master. But if we look at Prabhupada's life and the life now of Bhaktisiddhanta's many disciples, Prabhupada's many disciples, that same inspiration, or maybe not on the same level or intensity, but that same kind of inspiration can be had in separation if we learn how to associate. It's a different way of association. If we learn how to associate in separation. And as we serve in separation, we feel the presence of the spiritual master. We feel like, yes, he's happy I'm doing this. You can feel that. You can feel that he knows. Krishna knows, he knows. And you feel inspired even in separation. And so that's that kind of inspiration that the devotee got in Prabhupada's presence. If we can learn to experience that in separation from our spiritual master, then it will make our Krishna consciousness so much easier to execute. And even though we'll feel separation, someday when our spiritual master leaves, we will simultaneously feel separation, but feel his presence, like both things at the same time. If that makes sense. Like, well, as Prabhupada said, I never felt separated. So his spiritual master passed in 1936, but he's still feeling he's present, and he's still feeling his separation. He's feeling both things. So that's beautiful, right? And now from these stories where Prabhupada shows up to someone who's leaving their body, or Prabhupada shows up in dreams, maybe to some of you have had dreams of Prabhupada, or some people you know have dreams of Prabhupada. It shows that his presence is not on a physical level, that he can be present on other levels. When Prabhupada was asked, how will we get guidance from you when you leave? He said, I will, from within the heart, I will guide you, and I will guide you in dreams. So in other words, he's saying that I'll still be there. So that's why we can say, I always feel the presence of my spiritual master, not just as a theory, but practically on another dimension. The guidance is there, the association is there. And that association is real, not just the physical. Physical is not real, physical is temporary. So what we think is the real association, the physical, that's not really the real eternal association. Also, most of you, maybe all of you, never met Prabhupada, but sometimes you'll hear something Prabhupada says, and it'll just hit you, and it will make a difference in your life for that moment, or for that day, or for the rest of your life. So how is that? you're being changed so much just by an instruction, and that instruction is eternally valuable, right? It didn't matter you weren't there when it was spoken. Now, some devotees say whenever a spiritual master leaves, they say, well, you have to take shelter of another spiritual master. You always have to have a living guru. That philosophy is there, especially by people who went to find another guru after Prabhupada left and said, you need to have a living guru. That's been said many times. But that kind of minimizes then Prabhupada's, like, what's the potency of his books and his instructions if I need to find someone else to kind of replace him? So that's not a fact, that he lives on forever. And not only Prabhupada, but the instructions that you may get from other devotees who have left. You may read a book that they've written or hear something that they said. It's as powerful, it can be as powerful as the day it was spoken, right? Isn't it? You know, when there's a Bhagavatam class, it's like everybody feels like, oh, today's Bhagavatam class, like it's special because it's being spoken today. Let's go hear it. It's today's class. But we can listen to classes that were spoken 50 years ago, and they're as powerful and as relevant. And the example that Prabhupada gives, which I think is maybe one of the best and most easily understandable examples, is Bhagavad Gita. How is Bhagavad Gita working? It was spoken 5,000 years ago. So if things spoken that long ago become irrelevant or impotent, then how is Bhagavad Gita working? So Prabhupada was using that example as an example of separation from the spiritual master. The spiritual master's left, or it's separation from Mahaprabhu. He was here 500 years ago, but the instructions they're still as potent as when Krishna spoke them to Arjuna. And when Krishna spoke them to Arjuna, you know, Krishna obviously knew we were going to be reading them thousands of years later. So he was really speaking to us. And I think it's obvious when Krishna speaks, he doesn't speak relative knowledge that's only valid in a particular time and circumstance, but it's eternal. So if Krishna's instructions work and they're 5,000 years old, then we can understand that whatever is spoken is as powerful today as when it was spoken. And often what happens after the spiritual master leaves is that you end up studying what he said more carefully because you become more dependent on it, because now you don't have the personal association. Or you'd say, well, I spaced out in class today, but there'll be class tomorrow. And I don't have to pay so much attention because there'll be class the day after tomorrow. The instructions are always there. When the spiritual master leaves, okay, there aren't any more. You've gotten them all. Now you go back and study them. You think, oh, he's left us so many gems. I didn't even realize. I took it for granted. And now we go deeper. So, I mean, this sounds strange to say, but in a sense, you can say he has to leave at some point for you to actually appreciate what he gave you. You may not fully appreciate it until he goes. Because when he goes, you become more dependent on the instruction rather than the personal association. And you can't just write a letter and get an answer. Now you have to dig into what he said and figure it out. So you have to go deeper. Which is great, because then you understand Krishna consciousness more deeply, and you can help other people. So there's some questions or comments or something in the chat. So I'm going to see what it says. Okay. All right. There's a question from Para Ananda. Piotri, bueno. And we establish strong Krishna thinking in a situation where we have a lot of family responsibilities. When our mind is absorbed in working with children, opals. We know Bhaktivinoda Thakur dealt with it some, but what about us conditioned souls? We better learn how to do it. It's not, well, there's a funny story. Oh, I just heard this story. Prabhupada was talking to one of his disciples and he said, I wasted so much of my life. I wasted so much time. In other words, Prabhupada saying I should have taken up the spreading of Krishna consciousness earlier, but maybe Prabhupada was saying, Grihastha life was, it was such an entanglement for him. He had so much service to his Guru Maharaj and so many responsibilities in household life. Or maybe he's thinking I should have not tried to develop the business, but should have gone forward in spreading Krishna consciousness. But so it's a reality of Grihastha life that you have certain responsibilities and that they will take time. And that time, which could have been used directly for your own sadhana or service, it becomes service to the family. And you might feel like, this is difficult. It's making it difficult. When I was brahmachari, I just did Sankirtan all day now. As a Grihastha, I have to make money and so many things. And it's a fact. We have to. And so Prabhupada was once joking with some devotees, and he just out of the blue said, why are the Grihasthas always in Maya? I don't know the context of why he said that. I have no idea. But maybe there was some problem with some Grihasthas, and he was just reflecting. Nobody said anything. What would you say if Prabhupada said, why are the Grihasthas always in Maya? What are you going to say? So then Prabhupada answered the question. He was laughing. He said, because that's their constitutional position. So in other words, we're worried about money. We're worried about this, that, the next thing. There's so many things we worry about. As Grihasthas, that as renunciates, you don't worry about. And so obviously it's a different kind of challenge. But the other side of that equation that Prabhupada gave was that you can be Krishna conscious in any situation. And my own experience is it really depends on your determination. And I would use the word stubbornness rather than, I like the word stubbornness rather than determination. Like, we need to become so stubborn that we're going to be Krishna conscious no matter what. So, you're going through situations in Grihastha life which are diverting you from whatever. Just like recently our bank account was hacked. So we have to start a new bank account and we have to put we have to go through all our payments and put them under the new account. And, it's just hours of just hassle. Of course, if you're managing a temple, this could happen as well. Right? But then your kids get sick and you go to the doctor and, these are responsibilities you have. And so if we're in the wrong consciousness, then we'll think, all these responsibilities are causing me to forget Krishna or making it impossible to be Krishna conscious. Don't say that. But be stubborn. I have this good quality. I'm very stubborn. And my stubbornness is like, I don't care what I go through. I'm not going to allow anything, no matter how much it deviates me from what I have to do in my service. I'm not going to allow it to affect my Krishna consciousness, even though it should, because so many responsibilities, this and that. I'm too stubborn. So no, I'm not going to allow it no matter what. And as soon as you say, oh, it's so much and it's so hard and it just deviates me, that means you're not stubborn. You need to be more stubborn. Don't allow it. You know, when you're stubborn, someone says, I'm going to make you do this. And you go, you'll never make me do it. I'll never do it. And they'll bend your arm and they'll offer you money, whatever. He says, no, you can't make me do it. I'm stubborn. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do this. And you can't make me do this. So I think stubbornness is a great quality. But from a philosophical perspective, then we say that if you want to be Krishna conscious, then nothing can deviate you. Even though it's deviating you, quote unquote, it can't deviate you. All right, my daughter's sick. I have to take her to the hospital. And then we have this problem with the bank. I have to go to the banker. And then I have this problem. I'm not feeling well. I have to go to the doctor, and just on and on and on. End of the day, it's like, what did I do? I hardly even had time to chant my rounds. But if we use that as an excuse to not be Krishna conscious, then Maya will just take you and just make you think that you can't be Krishna conscious in all those situations. So then the simple answer to your question is, if you think going through all these situations means you can't be Krishna conscious, you are right. And if you think going through all these situations, you can be Krishna conscious, you are right. Because once you think you can't be, you won't be. You lose your stubbornness and you'll just say, well, what could I do? These situations. Could you imagine Srila Prabhupada going through all those situations and saying, I can't be Krishna conscious in this situation? You can't imagine that, right? It wouldn't happen. Okay, I hope that answers that question. Well, another answer to your question is 16 rounds, 4 principles. Do that. Just make sure you do that every day. No matter what else you do, make sure you do that every day. And study Prabhupada's books. You associate with devotees and you'll be okay. And you'll have the required strength to deal with everything else. Once you drop that, all I can say to you is good luck. I can't even say good luck, because once you drop that, you dropped your good luck. All I can say to you is bad luck. If you drop your rounds and principles, then yeah, I can't say good luck. I can only say bad luck. No luck. So devotees asking, how do we know if Prabhupada's pleased with us? Well, there's things Prabhupada wants us to do. We should understand if we do those things, he's pleased. And going back to my other point, trying your best, we should feel like, well, if I'm trying my best, then Prabhupada is pleased. And, Prabhupada gives us instructions, gives us things to do. It's not difficult to please Prabhupada. If, like you sincerely engage in some service, you're helping the temple. Cleaning, can you please Prabhupada by cleaning the temple? Yeah. Can you please him by cleaning your house? Yes. Can you please him by following sadhana? Yes. Can you please him by distributing 1 book a year? Yes. 1 book a day, 1 book a minute, 1 book a second. It's not a great task to please Prabhupada. Pleasing the Vaishnavas, pleasing the other devotees. You can please your guru, Prabhupada's pleased. You make your best efforts. Don't be lazy, make your best efforts. Prabhupada didn't like lazy devotees. Don't concoct some new philosophy. That will displease Prabhupada. Don't make up philosophy. Don't rationalize philosophy. Don't make up new Siddhanta. That will displease Prabhupada, for sure. If you don't know what you're talking about, don't talk, because you might say something wrong and misguide yourself, misguide others, or misinterpret something Prabhupada said. So that's really upsetting to him. Yeah. Don't criticize devotees. Don't fight with devotees. If we can cooperate with devotees, Prabhupada will be pleased, for sure. Okay. I have a comment from Damayanti. We learned how to stay on Bhakti Yoga surfboard. We learned everything from Prabhupada. Many just love Prabhupada by all the temple services and healthy relationships. Then to please Prabhupada, Lord Krishna is pleased. Codependency is unhealthy. There's now a 12-step book about this, yeah. Codependency means you can't function. You depend so much on another person to function normally that you're kind of dysfunctional without that person. I mean, in a sense, spiritually we're dysfunctional without Prabhupada, but it means dependent in an unhealthy, in a way that makes you weak, not makes you strong, because healthy codependency makes you strong. Krishna Premi says, is it normal to do our daily sadhana while realizing we're not Krishna conscious and just hope to be someday? You don't really have a choice, do you? Because how are you going to be Krishna conscious if you don't do it? Krishna Premi, no matter how Krishna conscious you become, you will always think, I'm not Krishna conscious. So you might as well get used to thinking that way. Right? Which is, okay, I won't single you out, but the fact is that I say this a lot to devotees, that we feel that we're not very Krishna conscious now, and we've been devotees a few years or a few decades, and we're starting to worry, does it really work, and will I become Krishna conscious, and so forth. But one thing that you may not realize that's happening is that as you advance, you think you're less Krishna conscious than you were when you were a new devotee. So the more you advance, the more you think, I'm not Krishna conscious, and then it can become discouraging. You think, I'm not making any advancement, but really that's a sign that you are making advancement. So that's why I said you're never going to think you're Krishna conscious, and the more Krishna conscious you become, the more you're going to think you're not. So it's actually a sign that you are advancing, that you're thinking that you're not. Now, you might say, no, but objectively speaking, I only chant one round. I used to chant 64. Okay. But when it's not objective, it's just a subjective feeling, I'm not Krishna conscious. Usually it's because we're more Krishna conscious that we feel that way. We're more aware of our anarthas. Like, I felt I was more Krishna conscious when I was a new devotee. Yeah, but you weren't aware of all your anarthas. Now that you become purified, you become more aware of them. So now you feel like you're less Krishna conscious. And if you think about it, when we were new devotees, we were all pretty proud. And we thought we were pretty advanced. So later on, we go into depression saying, I'm so fallen, but we shouldn't really be depressed by it. We should just think, well, the process is working. I'm just becoming a little bit humble. And now the more I advance, the more I see how advanced I'm not. So then I keep feeling like I'll never be Krishna conscious, which is in general a sign that I am becoming Krishna conscious. And when you finally reach prema, Krishna premi, then you're definitely going to feel like you're not Krishna conscious. So there's no end to it. There's a prayer by Rupa Goswami. He says, I have no love for Krishna. And then he goes on to say things which are, he's speaking like a conditioned soul, but he's saying things like, not only do I not have love for Krishna, I don't have love for hearing and chanting. na prema, na shravanadi. Shravana means hearing, adi means etc. Shana, shravanadi bhaktir. I don't have prema. I don't even have the things that, I don't even like to do the things that bring prema. So, but that's when you start to become attached to devotional service, then you start to realize how you're not attached, how your attachment is very strong. And a lot of these things we didn't realize as young devotees because we thought we were more Krishna conscious than we were. As you advance, you become more aware of the false ego, the lack of humility. But I think if we stand back a little bit, we would have to say that the realization of our lack of humility is really a sign of humility that we didn't have when we were young devotees. You know, as a young devotee, you might say, I'm not humble, but a lot of that is just kind of acting, even sometimes false pride. You know, I can look at me, I told you I'm not humble. You should compliment me for saying that. You know, that kind of thinking. I want to impress you by telling you I'm not humble, so you'll think I'm humble. You know, that can happen in early stages of bhakti, but when you advance, then it becomes more genuine. You more genuinely realize you're not humble. And then you start feeling, oh, I'm worse than I was when I was a new devotee. No, you're actually better. You're actually more humble now because you're realizing how humble you're not, that you didn't realize when you were young. I don't know about you, but when I was a young devotee, I didn't really know what the word humble meant. It wasn't really like important to me. I didn't even think about it. I didn't use the word. Yeah, later on, I started to realize I'm not very humble. That was a good sign, but it was depressing because I thought I was going down, but it really wasn't going down. And like if you're advancing, if you chant more, you become more aware of your faults, your anarthas, your discrepancies, your contaminations, your conditioning. But you're only becoming aware of that because you're making more advancement. Otherwise, how would you be aware of it? So we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves. And like Damayanti was saying, just ride the waves. Just keep riding them. Don't jump off the boat, no matter what. No matter how rough the ocean is, just stay on the boat. Because if you jump off the boat, then Prabhupada can't save you, but he's coming on the boat to save you. Now you're off the boat, so he can't save you. So if you just stay on the boat, even you're nauseous, even though you're not getting good rest, just don't jump off. Stay on the boat, then you can be saved. And also, you might think, well, you know, I'll never be purified. Well, definitely if you jump off the boat, you will never be purified. At least if you stay on the boat, there's a chance, right? So we have to think that way, like what else am I going to do? I'm chanting Hare Krishna, I'm following this process. I don't feel like I'm advancing much. Well, how do you plan to advance? By stopping the process? By lamenting that you're not advanced? No, that's not going to work. Right? So what, do you really have a choice? I'm not very advanced. Well, what's your choice? The only choice is to try to become more Krishna conscious. Right? I think that's kind of our saving grace if you ever become discouraged. There's really, you know, you're in the desert and you see in the distance there's water, but it's so hot and so far. But do you really have a choice? Because that's the only place there's water. And though it looks nearly impossible to reach it, if you don't reach it, you'll die of dehydration. So you don't really have a choice. So you just go for it. So that's how I see Krishna consciousness. I may not be as Krishna conscious as I want to be, but do I have a choice of doing anything else? I was also thinking something quite interesting. I don't know where this came. Maybe someone said this. It's kind of funny. So today in the world, we have a different view of the world because of social media. And previously, like if you wanted to run a commercial, it could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars on television or more, right? So it's only big corporations run commercials. Now everybody can run a commercial for whatever they do, right? You want to learn how to make money on Amazon? There's 1 million people running Amazon ads for like $20 an ad. So like anybody can do it. You want to learn coaching? There's someone. You want to learn how to start a business? There's someone advertising that, right? And I think somebody said, or this idea came up and said, yeah, I can teach you how to make money in real estate and you'll become rich. Life after life. And you'll continue doing this life after life. Or another way of looking at it is, yeah, I can show you how to do this and you've been doing this for lifetimes. That's why you're attracted to hearing me teach. And I've been doing it for lifetimes. And I will show you how to do this, how to make wealth. In your next life, you can continue doing it, working like an ass to become rich. So when I looked at that, I thought, that's really a really good way of looking at these things. You know, when people are promoting, you can learn this, you can do this. And you go, yeah, you've probably been teaching this for 1 million lifetimes. And you want to get me into it, and then I will be doing this for 1 million lifetimes. Isn't it? Get ahead, start this Amazon business. Look at what I made, $46,000 this month. Yeah, so you can continue making $46,000 for the next 1 million lifetimes. Congratulations. Think that's like a good thing? Think that's smart? Is that what you want to do? So for us, the alternative is just act in a way that you can get out of the material world, because if you don't, you're just going to be swimming around trying to figure out how to be materially happy, which you know is impossible. You've all tried it, it didn't work. That's why you're here. Okay. Comment from Sydney. Happened to me, honestly, lots of learning, acceptance, impatience, and perfectionism issues. Fortunately, I'm aware of this and making necessary corrections. Very difficult not to get in a hurry. Your lectures, workshops have really helped me learn acceptance and patience. Well, for all your perfectionists out there, I have some bad news for you. Maybe it's good news. Well, the good news is if you try your best, that's your perfection. And the bad news is if you want material perfection, it doesn't exist and you'll be trying for lifetimes. There's this actor who played this obsessive person. I think it was called Mr. Monk. Someone told me about it. This devotee told me about it because this devotee was obsessive himself. And he said, I'm like Mr. Monk. So I tuned to Mr. Monk, and like Mr. Monk was like obsessive about cleanliness. So like everywhere he'd go, he'd be cleaning. He'd be cleaning things. You know, it's like he'd be somewhere, and before he would touch something, he'd clean it, and then someone would bump into him, and then he would clean it. That's a OCD. That's what you do when you have OCD. You're just, one of the things you do is you just clean all the time, obsessively. So do you think you can get everything perfectly clean in the material world? Do you think you can get everything perfectly in order? Of course not. The world wasn't created for that. And so you have to redefine perfection. So perfection is love. That's where perfection lies, not in the external. If you look for perfection in the external, you're a smarta brahmana. That's what smarta brahmanas are. They look for perfection in the execution of ritual. If you're a bhakta, you look for perfection in the state of your consciousness, of your heart. So perfectionism, if you want to be perfect in your consciousness. Offer your devotion to Krishna. That's perfection. But external perfection Krishna doesn't care about it, and he says it's not possible anyway. It's right in Bhagavad Gita, 1861. All your perfectionists. 1861, put it on your wall, get a tattoo on your arm. It says all endeavors are covered by some fault. So that can, yeah, it's okay. It's the material world. Abhinav says, my life, mainly sexual, have been stumbling for me. Beginning of my spiritual journey, they are making me weak, and many times I think I didn't do anything substantial. How to deal with these? Because they made me to leave bhakti for some time. You should join our... You know, when you have some big problem, then you're going to need specific help from devotees and or organizations that deal with these things. Sometimes we can't just do it on our own, so we need help from other groups that are dealing with the same problem. So you should join a group that's dealing with this. Whatever issue you have that you can't solve on your own or through bhakti practices, and you can join groups that deal with it. They go more deeply into it. Yeah, that's what I would suggest. Rather than struggle with it your whole life. Or get association with devotees who don't struggle with it. And senior devotees who can guide you. Yeah. One thing that's important to understand also, although if it's addictive by nature, understanding doesn't help as much as just going into a group that deals with it. But one verse that I found always comforting in the Gita is when Krishna says, lust burns like fire. It's like that itch. The more you scratch, the more you're going to want to scratch. So the only way to overcome something that's difficult to overcome is to give it up. If you feed it, the desire to do it increases. Now, some things you have to feed a little bit. But if you feed beyond a certain point, then the desire to feed it increases. And so it's always good to understand that if you're trying to feed it, there'll be no end. You'll feed it for eternity. And we've already probably been feeding it for eternity, and we're still feeding it. So, you know, if the mind is telling you to feed something that you know is not going to satisfy that desire, then usually it means you have to purify the desire, overcome it, transcend it, or feed it just enough to calm it down. But if you feed it too much, you're just exacerbating your problem. You're making it harder because the desire is going to increase. So always remember that verse. That fire, putting fuel in the fire, thinking you're going to put the fire out in the fire, burning more strongly. Yeah, when you need help, you need help. Get help somewhere. If you're fighting something on your own and you're losing the battle, get help somewhere. Now, Kirti says, if we chant attentively following job retreat teachings, still do we feel we are a mess after 3 years, like the analogy you gave about cleaning the burn? Depends how burnt your pot is. But still, it's going to be cleaner than it was 3 years ago, right? So if your pot's really burnt, it's going to take longer to clean it. But if you stop cleaning it, it's never going to get clean. So do you have a choice? Oh, my pot's so burned. It's taking me so long. Okay, what's the option? Just leave it there. You can't use the pot. It's still got burnt rice on it. You can't cook with it. So you don't really have an option. And okay, I have to clean it. Yeah, so it's my fault. It's my fault that I burnt the rice. Right? So I committed all these material activities for lifetimes. And now we're like, oh, my mind, my senses, this is so difficult. Yeah, well, who created that? Who do you want to blame? And then you want to keep engaging in those same activities, which are causing you the attachment that you have now. It's like, it doesn't make sense, does it? Like, I'm so attached to this and I have these anarthas. Yeah, because we did so many things to cause that. And so now we're conditioned by those things. And so what am I going to do now? Give into those things thinking they'll go away? It's because I did those things that I'm frustrated. So logically, then I should purify myself by giving those things up or controlling those things, because that's the only way I'll overcome it. But if I keep giving into it, how's it going to get any better? Do you ever get frustrated with your desires? Why me? I don't deserve it. I'm chanting Hare Krishna. I still have all these desires. It's not fair. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're the ones who cultivated those desires. That's why they're there. So, you want to blame your mind? No, you control your mind. Blame yourself. And if you blame yourself, then maybe you'll get the sense that I shouldn't continue with this because these things are frustrating me because I continued with them. And now if I continue doing them, they're going to continue to frustrate me. Does that make sense? So, we're the ones who created the problem. You ever eat a big meal of pasta and bread and then fall asleep? Add some cheese and ice cream for dessert. Yeah. And then you can't even see straight like an hour later. Well, whose fault is that? Why am I so tired? You can't even eat to get tired. Yeah, well, look what you ate. Right. So if we blame ourselves for doing the wrong thing, it can be good. Maybe it'll bring some sense into our mind, so we stop doing it. Okay. We have a comment from Kamal. Be nice. Anyone who is surrendered to the spiritual master is a pure devotee. Why you only want to be in the spiritual sky with Siddha Swarupa? It's a letter from Prabhupada. Why not all? If Shama Sundar will go, all others will go. We'll have another ISKCON there. If somebody does not go, then I shall have to come back to take him there. One should remember this. Every one of my disciples should act in a way that they may go with me and not have to come back and take another birth. Yeah. So how many million times have I said that Prabhupada wants us to go back to God in this lifetime? He's trying to get us back to God in this lifetime, wants us to cooperate. And here's another letter to show that. Thank you, Kamal. From Hari Bhakti, is devotion in separation is only in ISKCON Gaudiya Math. It's Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy. I'm not an expert outside. I mean, ISKCON Gaudiya Math, yeah, Gaudiya Vaishnavas. I don't know. The Brajbasis exemplify the highest degrees of separation, and I don't think I have never heard it existing in Vaidhi Bhakti, on reverence. Yeah, I believe it's an aspect of Braj Bhakti. So Jyotirmai says, that is the point. Is that really our best? Maybe it's not our best, but it's maybe the best we can do right now. So what does that mean? Sounds like a cop-out, right? Considering who I am under the conditions I'm in, under the conditions I've been through, according to the mind and body I have, if I'm doing everything I feel I can do, and I do it sincerely, that's my best. Could I do better? Of course. We could all do better. Can we do better? Maybe not. Could I do better? Yes. Can I do better? No. Could I do better? Well, due to my conditioning and my association and my job and my schedule, can I do any better than this? Probably not. If I were super Superwoman, could I do better? Yeah, of course. So I don't think we should allow the could I do better to destroy the can I do better. Yeah. Everyday effort chanting, not feeling happy since the chanting is not satisfactory. Even after good effort, mind wanders and ends up in a mess. Yeah, use my japa affirmations. And listen to the japa classes and just ask yourself, what am I doing? What's the meaning of the mantra? Connect with the meaning. It's really important. So really our best, especially when our best changes and really do, yeah. Sometimes our best is conditioned by circumstance. But only you can answer that question. Is it your best? Sometimes it's not my best, but I pray to Krishna to be my best. So I pray to Krishna to help me try my best. How can one know if his guru is satisfied? Ask him. The answer is yes. Of course, Krishna Prema, you can do more if you want, but you just had a kid. So, like, don't stress out. Otherwise, your kid will be stressed if you're stressed. So do what you can. So many questions. Oh my God. We have to save them for Wednesday, okay? Because we're going to chant japa now. So Chaitanya Dasi, can you save those questions? And then all of you, those questions I didn't answer, make sure you come back on Wednesday. And we'll answer them, okay? We'll start the next class with those questions or reading those comments.